Pulsechain and Pulsex are both going to be launching very soon. And have you ever wondered which might perform better? And then you have people just putting conjecture out there, or that's another fancy word for opinion. What if there was a way to look at data to get an idea of which one has more interest around it from a macro sense? That is exactly what we did in this video. We took a look at Telegram and the amount of people in each Telegram group, their Twitter account and the growth rate of their Twitter account, the number of interest in terms of publishers like me putting content out around Pulsex or Pulsechain, as well as the number of views, because that's a gauge of interest as well. You have the creator as well as the person watching, hashtags on Instagram, hashtags on TikTok, Google Trends, and website traffic, to put all of those together into one spot to try to get the best gauge of which one is the most popular when launch happens, because the most popular one could potentially have the most demand, i.e. the price could go up that way. So love to hear your thoughts in this video, but first, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam, and for those of you who are returning, it's good to freaking see you. If you are returning and you are not subscribed, you should fucking do that. And you can check out Twitter down below if you want to support in other ways. There's also links down below. So let's get into the video. When we take a look at all these factors, the idea for me, right, being relatively new into this, is to understand what, like, people, what's actually going on, right? Because you talk to people in this community and everybody's extremely bullish. So you're like, I'm in a bubble. Is this any representation of reality, right? Or which one is actually going on? So I like to look at it from a much broader sense to see if I am biased in some way, right? Because me, you, we're all biased in some way. But if we can pull ourselves back and look at the data and see what the data is showing us, then we get a more clear picture. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do here. So as we mentioned, we took the number of Telegram in each Pulsex or Pulsechain group on this site is called Social Blade, and you can put in any social profile. So companies who will hire influencers for campaigns and whatnot for marketing sometimes use this site to get an idea of the social aspects of a person's profile. And we get to see the growth rate. So this is Pulsex is growing at about 197 new people following them on Twitter, right? So we get to compare that with Pulsechain, as well as the total size. You know, this is 40,000 followers versus the total size of Pulsechain. Over on YouTube, we took a look at the videos released over the last 24 hours, right? Videos and relevance. And then we added up any video that had, so this is Pulsechain that I searched for, Pulsechain Crypto, to weed out any like fluff or crap that's not relevant. Anything that has the logo or Pulsechain or something like PLS in the thumbnail and or in the title, we count, right? Because then you get in a gauge, and yes, they're very closely related. So you have lots of people who will do things like this, Pulsechain plus Pulsex, right? But we want to get a gauge to see if one of them is more popular than the other, because that could give us an indication of the demand when they come out. Then we took a look at over the past month and the total number of views. And we looked at the same criteria. It has to be in the thumbnail and or the title of the video, and we added up the total number of views, right? Because on the one hand, as publishers, right, well, that requires work involved, but what if nobody's actually paying attention? So we want to know, like, the community, how much work in the community is getting pushed towards which direction, right? Pulsex or Pulsechain. But also when we take a look at the macro community of people who are consuming the content, what are they actually watching? Right? And that's where we look at Pulsechain Crypto and Pulsex Crypto over the last 30 days and the total number of views on the top 10 videos. Because then we get that gauge, right? Where's the actual people watching? We did this, we took a look at Instagram hashtags, so hashtag Pulsechain, hashtag Pulsex, to see what is going on on Instagram. We want the most broad view. Like when I used to follow Tesla, I think of Tesla and the analysis that I would do with Tesla as painting a mosaic, right? Those pictures where you have tiny little bits and pieces, right? And all together you like pull out, right, on Instagram, you know, when you have that mosaic and they just like, you can just see a tiny little bit in the photo. And then as you pull out, they pull the camera out, you're like, oh wow, there's hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of little bits of information in this thing that they're showing you, and it pulls out and it's a lion's head, or it pulls out and it's a beautiful scene of like a sunset, all little bits of different pieces of something. Well, that's how I look at analysis. I don't want to just gauge it on one data point, right? Because that data point's probably biased. So let's take a look at several different data points, right? And paint our own picture of reality based upon, right, the Telegram, the Twitter, the YouTube from different angles, the Instagram here, as well as TikTok. All of these places, humans are. And humans are giving us this data for free, so we get to understand what is going on. Another place that a lot of people spend a lot of time is in search on Google and YouTube. This gives us a fantastic indication of what people are actually looking for. So on Google, we search for Pulsechain and Pulsex to take a look at the trend data. So we're going to come back to this in just a moment. But first, this site here is alexa.com. This is an Amazon site. I will only actually have access to this until the end of this month, April 2022. So we will enjoy the data while it's still free or available. They are a web analytics company and they rank different websites based upon estimated traffic and several other things. And they give you this nice little chart here over the last 30 days, or sorry, 90 days of how their website is ranked relative to all the other websites that they rank. Remember, there's millions and millions of websites. And this right here is for Pulsechain. Pulsechain is ranked 28,000th globally out of millions and millions of websites. And in the United States, it's ranked 20,000th, right? So we did that for both of them. We put all of that data into here to go over. But first, because we didn't put these charts in there, let's take a look at this, and then we'll come back and deep dive into this. This is, again, Pulsechain is in blue, Pulsex is in red. This is the worldwide search volume. Remember, for those of you who are not aware, Google is the largest search engine in the world. You know what number 2 is? YouTube. So you have the 2 largest search engines in the world, and they give us the access to the data, right? It's the least they can do for stealing all of our other data. In terms of what people are actually looking for on both of those platforms. So, when this is over the last 12 months. So we get to see here, this is for the web search. This is for web search. And we get to see that this is the pop when it happened, right? When Pulsechain came out, right? And you could see it's kind of just trending flat up a little bit. And then Pulsex came out. You had this giant spike, way higher than Pulsechain, right? But there's going to be some type of buildup because throughout this time, information is spreading. You can think of like information as kind of like a virus, right? That seems like a pretty relevant way to look at it from an analogy standpoint. And it just continues to spread. So you would think this would probably be higher, right? Because that information has been able to spread more when the new thing comes out. And then we see a drop off right here for like a couple of weeks where the search volume for Pulsex dropped below the search volume of Pulsechain. Now it looks like they're almost converging. So even though Pulsex is more popular in terms of search volume for most of the time period here, well, for the entire time period basically, except for these 2 week periods here, it may just be because if you look here, this is the 26th of February was when this ended. The Pulsex sacrifice ended on the 25th, right? So you would expect this to drop down, but then it started to come back up here, right? You had this week where it came up and then it came up again. It looks like it may be dropping here in terms of this data. Let's take a look at it on the search volume for YouTube, because this is also very interesting. On here, we see the same drop off, right? Which could be expected because there's no sacrifice anymore. But we see a giant spike up, and the like separation between the two has expanded, right? Because if you look here, it was between 67 and 32. So the total like search volume. Let's see what it says. Interest over time. Numbers represent search interest relative to the highest point on the chart for the given region and time. A value of 100 is peak popularity for the term. A value of 50 means that the term is half as popular. A score of 0 means there's not enough data. So you get to see that the gap it opened back up as we came out of this. So we saw the same data from the Google search volume as we did from here, where this gap is like opening up here. So this gives us kind of like a very broad sense of like what's going on. Pulsex is definitely more popular, right, in terms of search interest on YouTube and search interest on Google. So that can give us an idea what might be the case when we look at the YouTube data over here, when we click and we search for views and publishers, right? Which one, right? Because this could be the leading indicator to be like, okay, Pulsex is more popular for search volume on YouTube globally. It is also more popular on average than search volume for Pulsechain on Google. Let's take a look over here. We have in gray Pulse and in white Pulsex. And we've been tracking this now for, I actually did it before this, I think, but I didn't track the data. Across the board, Pulsechain is more popular when it comes to Telegram users. Now, another thing that I mean, like try to get it into a conversation when there's 63,000 fucking people in there. Like, it's not super useful. Like, there's just a lot of stuff going on in there, so it's not always super useful. I think groups that are way smaller sometimes can be more useful or valuable. But clearly, the interest in Pulsechain is greater than it is in Pulsex. Although, if you look week over week, the growth in Pulsechain has only gone up by about 275 or something, where the growth in Pulsex's Telegram has gone up by almost 900. So that's interesting, right? Pulsechain definitely more popular. When we look at Twitter, we get to see across the board, Pulsex's Twitter is growing faster, right? We've got 3 weeks in a row of declining growth for both accounts actually. 269 per day on average, 244, and then 197. And we have similar thing, 137, 133, 126. This is the average number of followers gained per day on Twitter. But in this case, Pulsex wins. When we look at the size, similar to Telegram, Pulsex is the loser or the not as popular here. But let's take a look here and see which one has gained more over the last 2 weeks. So we've got 900 and 1200. So again, similar to the Telegram, the total number of gained followers over the past week is greater for Pulsex. But Pulsechain is bigger in both cases, but that's probably due to the timing, right? Like one has been out for 8 months longer than the other one, so you would think that they would grow faster or have a larger absolute number of followers. But what about interest, say on YouTube and the hashtags and stuff? Let's take a look at that. When we look at the total number of views, so this is the content that people publish, and then you look over the last 30 days and you look at the top viewed videos they have, right? Pulse in the title or in the thumbnail or PLS or something like that. And we only count those videos and we count the top 10 in terms of the most views. Well, here we get to see Pulsex has more interest. Not a terrible big difference here, 183,000 versus 147,000. We do see a downward trend, right? 356, 319, and then 183 in terms of the total number of views on the top 10 videos for Pulsex, where there's more variability, but a increase for Pulsechain. Right? So Pulsex is trending down, still more popular than Pulsechain in terms of views. Pulsechain, there's no trend. Well, there is an upward trend, it looks like, but not. It's but much more variable, right? 117 to 244, then back to 147. So there's a lot more variability, but Pulsechain is gaining. So when we do this again next weekend, this will be interesting to check out. Here we've seen a switch once, and I don't know if we'll see a switch back, but this is the publisher. So this is like people like me. Like clearly you can tell this kind of stuff takes time and effort and work to create content. So this is the community of people who are in Pulsechain and Pulsex. Where are they putting their efforts? What are they most excited about? Right? What are they creating content around? And we saw Pulsex be more popular 3 weeks ago. Then it flipped to Pulsechain, and then here again it's still Pulsechain, but not by much. This is closing. This is very close. So this is going to be interesting to see if this flip flops this coming week or what actually ends up happening. When we look at Instagram, so this is a brand new metric as well as TikTok. You can already see what's going on with TikTok, but we'll talk about that in a second. Instagram hashtag usages for Pulsechain versus hashtag Pulsex. Pulsex wins there, right? Pulsex probably has a cooler logo, cooler name so maybe that's why. And Instagram's obviously very, very visual. TikTok. Now this was interesting. This is very interesting, right? So we have TikTok 11.2. Let's see if we can pull up a video and pull on. Let's click on this kid's video, and this is only 3 million. Pulsex is only 3 million. This is a big, right? This is massive. This is the most clear indication, right? What do we have? Equals 11.2 divided by 3. We almost have a 4x, 3.7x more views for hashtags with Pulsechain than Pulsex. That's pretty interesting. That's a big magnitude. This one, because of the size, right? If you have 8,000 data points and 5,000 data points, yeah, that's cool. That's a decent amount of data. But 11 million and 3 million, it's a big difference. It's a pretty big difference, right? Same thing. Like you're gaining popularity over here by several hundred per day, but like this is a big deal, or like a big amount of difference between these two. So this will be interesting to see. This is the first time I've checked this data, so we'll see how this changes next weekend. I'm curious. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this kind of stuff. Is there any metrics we could use on Facebook, right? Because Facebook is not as transparent in some of this stuff. Let me know down below in the comments. If you find this shit interesting, take a second, share it with somebody else who's in the community. Share with them. Nobody else is doing this kind of shit. Appreciate the support. Okay, so now let's take a look at Lexa. Remember, this is the data analytics company that's tracking estimated traffic and whatnot to rank Pulsex.com and Pulsechain.com. Again, this is Pulsechain here and here, and this is Pulsex. So we get to see globally, Pulsechain is more popular. It's held its consistency throughout this time. It went from 17,300 at the start about a month ago, or 3 weeks ago, to 17,300 again. So it hasn't changed. It stayed about, lost a little bit here, gained a little bit here, then came back. So it's sitting pretty consistently. Pulsechain has also stayed pretty consistent, 28,000 globally. Remember, there's millions of sites. So this is kind of interesting though, right? Globally, Pulsex, their website, is about 11,000 rankings more popular than Pulsechain. Also, within the United States, Pulsex's website is more popular across the board. However, this is interesting. Look at this. When we first started tracking this, it was double. Like, remember, but this is like 2 weeks after the stopping of Pulsex's sacrifice. And then you see a big drop off here, and then it starts to gain popularity again. So this has been trending down for Pulsex, where Pulsechain has also been trending down, and now just this week, this is the United States, so this is not globally, just in the United States, they're getting very close. They're off by about 2,000 spots. Will Pulsechain like pull past in some of these things? Because the other metric here, we have to put like a caveat, like a little check mark or a star next to this hashtag data, because remember, Pulsechain came out 8 months, 10 months ago. So you have 10 months worth of people watching versus Pulsex came out, what, 4 months ago? So 10 months versus 4 months worth of people to like watch. Yeah, that's a big difference here. So we have to put that into perspective. But the data is like both ways. You get to see right here. This is Pulsex. This is Pulsechain. This is Pulsex. This is Pulsechain. Pulsex. This is mixed. We only have one data point here, but this was Pulsex, Pulsechain, Pulsex, Pulsex. So we have some going one way, some going the other way. Obviously, these are closely related. I don't know which one is going to perform better, but this is very interesting. This one, as I mentioned, was very interesting to me here. I'm also curious to see if we get another week in the United States, a downward trend in terms of getting more popular here, because these two have been sitting just regular in the world, so that's just sitting there. I'm curious to see, and also what happens over here on YouTube. If you found the video interesting or helpful, take a second to share with somebody else. If you would like to interact in other ways, there is a Twitter link down below. There is other ways to support if you'd like to support what I'm doing here. If you want to check out Instagram, there's a lot more fitness related stuff there, or there should be a video popping up with my head here so that you can check out the other YouTube channel related to fitness stuff. Not the traditional like how to work out or what your diet should be type stuff. It's unique things like this on the realm of compounds or peptides or SARMs or steroids, and that point of view, the stuff that's taboo or that mainstream doesn't have any fucking clue about. Now, appreciate you guys. Don't forget to press that like button and the subscribe button, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.